Thanks, Emily. I'm outside of the Boone County Government Center, which does have an electronic voting machine, but some other places don't. This new proposed House bill would require each and every voting location to have one for each and every election. One activity involves just a simple phone call, just to let the veteran know that you're thinking of them. Just a few minutes over the phone could change a life. Thanks, Noah. I'm downtown right now where there is definitely a difference. There's a strong family presence, and some businesses are thriving off of the energy. Each one is around 1,200 square feet, and there are 3 different designs. Similar to the house behind me, there's other houses within this lot with the exact same design and others who are very different. Thanks, Emily. I'm outside here on the lawn where protesters gathered here outside at 10 a.m. Lawmakers are trying to pass 2 bills involving the ballot initiative process. Both bills would make it more difficult to pass them. Thanks, Jordan. Missouri would be the last state to implement a prescription drug monitoring program if Governor Parson signs the bill. It allows doctors to use the program to track opioids prescribed by other doctors. A local pharmacist says he and others support the program. He says the program won't affect the prescription process. That's because there's already a monitoring program that covers a portion of the state.
So this is just kind of getting officially from the state level and filling in the few little holes in that net of catching those things. There's some smaller rural counties that aren't necessarily densely populated, but they are not reporting.
If signed into law, the program will be active statewide. The bill has received bipartisan support from both parties. In the newsroom, I'm Michael Imami, KMU8 News. Thanks, Emily. The resolution renounces a decision declaring Dred Scott a slave. Now both the Missouri Senate and House have introduced resolutions to condemn the decision. House member Rachel Prouty says the act is symbolic.
This is very much so a symbolic act. It is a huge deal to those of us who are still experiencing the implications and just the vestiges of that ruling.
The resolution passed out of committee unanimously this morning. It will now move to the House Administrative Oversight Committee and will be voted on at a later date. In the newsroom, I'm Michael Imami, KMU8 News. A bill in the Missouri House would make voting easier for visually impaired citizens. State Representative Yolanda Young sponsored the bill. Young says her work with senior citizens provided her with the inspiration for the bill's sponsorship.
My community has a high degree of diabetes, high blood pressure, and so forth, which also affects their vision.
The bill would require at least one electronic voting machine at each polling location. The machines would be available for voting in all elections, not just in federal elections.
It not only speaks to the issue of making accessible voting equipment available during federal elections, but during all elections, state, local, it doesn't matter.
Gregory Eccles, a Missouri voter, says this bill would allow him to be more independent at polling locations.
I don't have to be assisted in voting. I could just put the earphones on and go through the program and listen to the machine. And I find that would give me independence.
Eccles says having more independence is necessary and important. The bill will comply with a federal law making voting more accessible to citizens with disabilities. Visually impaired voters would not be forced to use the machine, but will have it available if they choose to use it.
We could do something that didn't cost anybody money, but it still got veterans, it still got them help that they needed possibly, and some attention that they know that they're still cared about.
A Missouri House bill designated the 22nd of each month Buddy Check 22 Day. It's a day where Missourians can participate in activities to increase veteran suicide awareness. One activity involves just a simple phone call, just to let the veteran know that you're thinking of them. Just a few minutes over the phone could change a life. The program's Facebook page has almost 14,000 followers, some of whom are veterans themselves. One veteran says reconnecting is very important.
There's many times, because of PTSD that, other veterans can help out, that were there at the same time. They know what you went through and you can talk it through with them.
But an expert says you don't have to be a veteran to connect and help out.
But if you're not a peer, if you're not a veteran, that doesn't mean you don't have a role. everyone has a role to play within this. And you don't have to be a peer, you don't have to be a psychologist.
Ziegel says he does not know the exact number of veterans the program has saved, but as long as it's at least one life, the goal is met. For KMUA Cares, a brighter tomorrow. Michael Imami, Columbia. The True False Film Fest and the first weekend of Mizzou graduation will be taking place in early May. The health department is working closely with organizers to ensure proper precautions are taken. An organizer for the True False Film Fest says the plan is tedious but helpful.
We, with the health department, have to put together a full operational plan for every single little event that we're doing. And while it might be a little tedious, it's actually very helpful to make sure that we're thinking through every sort of risk factor that could come into play.
Banks says the event will be held outdoors and everyone will be required to wear masks and social distance. Attendance is expected at around 40% of last year and traveling will be limited. Banks says 2 hotels are reserved for guests. Commencement for Mizzou will follow similar protocols.
When there were conversations about commencement, I do know that there were some folks from the health department in those meetings that happened for discussion.
Hum says while Mizzou is not under the health department's jurisdiction, meetings were still held with health officials. Mizzou's website says each student will receive tickets for up to 6 guests. Guests must wear face coverings, social distance, and sit in pods. The ceremonies will also be live streamed. While both events are expected to draw big crowds, both will be considerably smaller than in years past. Michael Imami, KOMU 8 News, Columbia.